welcome to another Mix Secrets TV. I'm Enrico De Paoli, music engineer and producer, and today I'm going to talk about a vintage piece of gear. In fact, it's a very analog-like piece of gear in the format of a plugin. It's very rare to say vintage and analog to a plugin, but that's what I call and what I feel when I use the PSP Audioware VintageWarmer. I'm going to show you, the basic functions of the VintageWarmer, but above all, I'm going to show you how I use it, why I use it the way I use, and how I make it sound the way I like it, to my ears. So I hope you enjoy the video and stay tuned to Mix Secrets TV. Let's go. So here we are with the session open, and I'm going to play a little bit of the session. Let me bypass the PSP for now so you can take a listen to what the mix sounds without anything in the master. These here are only metering plugins. There's nothing being processed in the master, and let's take a listen to the session, to the mix as it is.
I feel as deep as the ocean. I wanna feel the crashing of the waves. I wanna feel the emotion. I wanna be the one who misbehaves. Yeah, I gotta feel it, and I gotta know it, and I gotta be there every moment.
Okay, so let's open the PSP VintageWarmer plugin. It's in bypass, and I'm just gonna go over, its properties and its controls, so we can have a glance of how to use it. So the main knob is a drive knob. It's where we drive music, drive audio into the processor. So the more we drive audio into it, the more it will compress and limit the sound. This is not a downward compressor where you lower the threshold in order to start, getting compression. It's more of like an 1176 where you drive audio into it. Although we do have a ceiling control, which we'll get there, and it happens to be like the threshold in normal compressors we used to see. So the more we drive audio here, the more compressor we get and the more gain we'll get, of course. So let's take a listen.
I feel as deep as the ocean. I wanna feel the crashing of the waves. I wanna feel the emotion.
Okay, so this is a single and or multi-band processor, which means although we don't see all the separate bands like we do in normal multi-band compressors, this the PSP allows us to either process the audio in single mode or multi-mode. When we're in single mode, the low and high knobs become just a low and high EQ, where whose center frequencies will be shown on these knobs just below the low and high knobs. So let's take a listen in single mode how these EQs sound.
Feel as deep as the ocean. I wanna feel the crashing of the waves. I wanna feel the emotion. I wanna be the one who misbehaves.
So this is just like a tonal EQ just before the compressor stage, and it will, drive more lows into the compressor or drive less lows into the compressor, or drive more highs into the compressor or less, depending on what you do with these two knobs here. It's just a basic two-band EQ. Sounds very musical and very easy to just tone your sound according to what you want. Now, if you're working in multi-band mode, this becomes a multi-band compressor, which means this controls the drive of the low band, this controls the drive of the high band, and the crossover frequencies will be determined on these two knobs below here. So as it is now, the low band goes from 0 hertz to 100 hertz. Between 100 hertz and 5.6, 5.24 will be the mid band, which we have no controls for, and above 5K24 will be the high band. And the knobs just here, which in the single mode would be just EQ knobs. Here they would act as drive knobs to those bands. So this would be like a master drive knob. This would be a drive knob for you to drive more gain into the low band compressor, and this will be the drive knob for you to drive more gain into the high band compressor. So let's take a listen.
I feel as deep as the ocean. I wanna feel the crashing of the wave. I wanna feel the emotion.
So basically, the difference between using single and multi-band, of course, whatever we do here when we're in multi-band, let's say we drive more lows, it will not affect the way the compressor acts on the mids and high frequencies. So, well, technically, multi-band compressor is better, but it's impossible in art, in music, to say that it always works better. Now, a lot of times you're gonna feel that a single band compressor will act more as a glue compressor, just because it's compressing all bands, all frequencies in the same rhythm. So, and this is a godsend to have a very quick switch button to switch between single band and multi-band. And one thing that I always do when I'm engineering, I make comparisons. So let's say we drive a little gain here, I would definitely compare. Let me just set this back to a 16K. I would definitely compare if the compressor is working better, sounding better to my music in a specific, to this song in a specific, in single band or in multi-band. Let's take a listen.
Feel as deep as the ocean. I wanna feel the crashing of the wave. I wanna feel the emotion. I wanna be the one who misbehaves. Yeah, I gotta feel it, and I gotta know it.
Yeah, it's subtle, but I do hear more distortion from the compressor working hard when it's in single band. If you're working, with subtle compression, this may even be desired. A little drive in the single band compressor. So let's, for now, go on with the single band, and I'm gonna show you a few more controls and parameters. So we have here a mix knob, which is very useful, which allows us to create parallel compression without having to create a new buzz, a new track in your Pro Tools or whatever DAW you're using. So let's say we want to really compress, the track really hard.
I feel as deep as the ocean. I wanna feel.
The mix knob allows me to, dial back the compressed signal in relation to the pure signal. So as of now, I just dial the mix all the way to 0. So what I'm hearing is the raw mix without the PSP sounding. And as I drive this, up, I'm gonna hear more of the compressed signal mixed in.
I feel as deep as the ocean. I wanna feel the crashing of the wave. I wanna feel the emotion. I wanna be the one who misbehaves.
So it's a very quick way to achieve, parallel compression without having to, play with routing and new tracks and latency. This is all phase coherent and it's very quick to use. Now, this knob output, most compressors have this, but in this case here, if we're using this PSP for mastering, this will allow us to determine the maximum level of our audio coming out of the PSP VintageWarmer. So I did set this to -1 dB, which means if I'm bouncing this to disk and as a final master, my maximum level will not peak above -1 dB full scale, which is great. It's right here and readily available for us to use this as a mastering processor as well. And this will be true if the brick wall switch checkbox is marked, which means nothing, this will work as a digital brick wall limiter, and nothing will pass the output maximum level. Now, ceiling will be as if we were playing with a threshold in a regular compressor, which means I can lower the threshold. I can start to hear the compression take place without changing the gain, without having to drive more gain into the equipment. So let's take a listen.
I feel as deep as the ocean. I wanna feel the crashing of the wave. I wanna feel.
So as it is now, I lowered the ceiling or the threshold, if you will, to -12 dB, so I can hear a lot of compression happening without me having to drive gain into the PSP. When would I use this as opposed to this? Well, very easy. If I'm hearing my track, I like the overall level, the overall gain, or if I'm using the PSP inserted in a track within a mix, and I like the overall gain, but I wanna have more compression, I would lower the ceiling and I would get more compression. Let's not mix this with the output knob, as the output will control the volume, the gain coming out of the PSP, and no matter how, if I raise or if I lower this knob, it will not change the compressor effect that the PSP is causing in the music. The ceiling, on the other hand, as I lower it, it will change the compressor effect because it will be lowering a threshold line downward, towards the music peaks. And as I lower this, as you just heard, you will get, more compression happening. Now, speed, unlike most compressors that have an attack and a release speed timing control, this speed knob here refers to tape speed. So when it's at maximum, it's as if the tape was running, at a higher speed setting, let's say a 30 IPS, and if it's at the lower settings, it will simulate as if we were using a tape machine running at very low tape speeds. And the lower the tape speed, the faster the compression will sound. That's just how tape worked. So this is not exactly a attack and release setting. It's just more of a tape speed setting. And I find this in practice to be very subtle. It's not nearly as it's not nearly as controllable or as fast or as responsive as an attack and release setting on a compressor we are used to using, in everyday life. Now, there is a release knob here, which is a multiplier knob, and it will just extend the release setting that we're getting from this tape speed here, or it will have, it will diminish the release setting that the tape speed is causing. This also has a very subtle effect comparing to a regular compressor release setting. And we do have an auto checkbox, which will, unlike other compressors, the speed and the release knobs still do work, but the auto will just vary the release settings to an automatic setting, so that we get less distortion in low frequencies. So it's a welcome switch. Now, the long checkbox will really extend the release times to long ones, and this one is not subtle at all. And when we hit long,
I feel as deep as the ocean. I wanna feel the crashing of the waves. I wanna feel the emotion.
we can definitely hear, the effect of a longer release compressor. Probably good if you want to use this for a vocal, or something, inserted in the mix and not in the master. Now, let's talk about the setting that, it's the least talked about setting in any compressor. And here it's an amazing effect, which is the knee. Although, the more I drive gain here, the more compression I get and the more volume I get. The knee at 0 it means that the compressor is only happening at the dB indicated here. So since we are at 0 dB, it means that compressor will only take place once the music starts reaching the 0 dB scale. Now, as I raise this, actually I'm curving the knee of the compression, and the compression starts sounding, at much lower levels, which means that I can use the PSP VintageWarmer as a mid-level compressor, which means that without having to really drive the compressor hard, the gain setting, the drive knob really hard, I can start raising and bringing to our face the sounds that are buried in the mix without having to compress the mix too much. And this is the best knob. I would even have this knob a different color if I was designing this. I'm kidding, but this is a knob that I really, really use, and I'm gonna show you the effect of this, on the mix.
I feel as deep as the ocean. I wanna feel the crashing of the waves. I wanna feel the emotion. I wanna be the one who misbehaves. Yeah, I gotta feel it.
So this, without driving any gain into the compressor, into the PSP, I was able to inflate the mix. All the sounds in the whole mix, in the arrangement, that were lower in gain, all the subtlenesses, all the all the little notes, all the harmonics. As I curve the knee, a lot softer towards the low dynamic region of the mix of the music, as I bring this up, but technically I'm bringing the knee down. I'm bringing up to our ears, to our faces, the subtle sounds happening in the mix. So the effect this creates is an inflation effect, which is amazing. So aside from this, we have a few settings, under the hood. It lets us saturate low, mid, and high bands. We can drive more low, mid, and high bands, in a fixed manner here behind the panel. We can change the release settings separately when we're using multi-band mode, and we can align the VU in timing and in dB full scale. That means we can really trust that VU as a main meter to our mix, because we can align the 0 dB on the VU to -18 or to whatever level in the full scale meter that we desire. And that's pretty much it. We can choose how many samples over will light red, and this will be a good peak meter as well. And this is the PSP VintageWarmer that I've been using not only in single tracks, but in my masters, and it does sound analog, it does sound warm, and it's unlike, it's a very unique vintage plugin that sounds very vintage and very warm and very analog. It's very hard to say that, oh, this is all you need for mastering, because mastering is your ears that will judge, the tools that you need to use to each song you're mastering. But it's definitely a good plugin that you can even insert at early stages of your mix session, so that it will simulate, as you're doing your automation, it will simulate as if you're driving your mix to analog tape, to a half-inch, 2-track machine. And this will sound very, very, too close to that style of engineering. So I hope you enjoyed this video and this Mix Secrets TV. And I wish you great mixes, great sounds, and enjoy the PSP VintageWarmer. Really vintage. Bye-bye. Have a good day.